Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to discuss how stress is experienced in the mind and in the body. Can you recall having a disagreement with a friend and your heart starts beating faster? You feel a nervous anxiety, you start to sweat, your body's on alert, and you ask yourself, why am I getting so stressed out over this disagreement? Why? Well, imagine it's thousands of years ago. You're living on the savannah, and your world is teeming with viruses and bacteria with no knowledge of sanitation, no knowledge of wound dressing or even medical care. A broken bone, a bout with the flu, or mild infection could be your dire end of life. You either ate or got eaten, and you're a slow, plump, flightless species with no fangs or claws. You find yourself hiding behind a huge boulder, club in hand, ready to attack any animal that might be close. You hear the soft rustling of leaves on a cliff above. Your heart begins pounding in your chest, but you force yourself to remain still. Your worst fear has been confirmed. A lion appears to be stalking you, ready to pounce. If we freeze this moment and look inside your body, we would observe a number of changes taking place. Within the span of a few seconds, you have one or two decisions in order to save yourself, either run or fight. The good news is your body's actually programmed to give you the best possible advantage without you even needing to think, because your eyes dilate to give you better sight to judge distances and have better night vision. Your blood pressure increases along with your heart rate to deliver more nutrients to the muscles that will be needed during a sprint or a fight. Your breath gets heavier to pump as much oxygen into the blood supply as possible. Your body starts to sweat to cool off the skin and body temperature so that you don't overheat. Your endocrine system kicks in and gives you a surge of adrenaline that you will need for greater strength. Your serum glucose levels spike to supply sugar for energy and endurance. Certain functions are shut down to save energy, such as the arteries restricting to prevent excessive bleeding if a wound occurs. The digestive system shuts down since you won't be eating. Hormones shut down since you won't be having sex anytime soon. And blood thickens to provide maximum coagulation in the event of a wound. At this heightened state of mind, when you're about to burst, it turns out this was a false alarm. The lion has already eaten a meal earlier in the day, so he prances past you to find a place to rest. Your sigh of relief allows your body system to return to normal, but it's going to take some time. Your legs and arms are still kind of shaking from the surge of adrenaline, and your stomach feels queasy from having been shut down. And you still feel hypervigilant. Does this body response sound familiar? It should, because we get the same fight-flight response and false alarms all the time in modern day life. We aren't really facing life-threatening dangers, but it can feel that way. Our culture has evolved over thousands of years, but our neurological systems are essentially the same as they were when living thousands of years ago on the savannah, but we have moved from caves into condos. The only danger of predators we face is from our own kind in certain parts of the city. The false alarms are often self-created by our illogical thinking caused by this major body response. A disagreement with a friend feels like an attack. An attack feels like a savannah death from thousands of years ago, still recorded in our DNA. Credit card debt feels like possible future homelessness. A major exam in school feels like a fight with possible failure. Traffic jams feel like confinement when we have felt that suffocation maybe earlier in life, so we get triggered. Loneliness feels like an inner death. In some ways, our modern stressors are worse because they are ongoing. They don't have an end like the savannah, and the stress seems to always be present. Over the years, We got smarter, more complex and creative because our big brains mean we're now constantly aware of dangers given to us by the news, where we can now plan for the danger, dread the danger, and agonize ourselves over the danger. Biologist Robert Sapolsky, in his book Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, discusses that we are the only species that gets upset over future things that occur. Animals, for example, let's say the zebra, doesn't have a mortgage, an intimidating boss that could pull the plug on its job, deadlines to meet, marital woes, worry about health concerns, and so forth. The zebra might be hunted, but as soon as it's safe, it shakes off the stress in a matter of seconds and walks on as if nothing happened. But we are the only species who kill ourselves out of possible real fears or imagined fears. In the United States, 75% of adults report that they have experienced at least one major symptom of stress in the past month, and 35% of people report experiencing chronic work stress, according to the American Psychological Association. The National Institutes of Health estimates that at least 1 in 21 Americans reach that crack and collapse threshold in their lives, crossing over into full-blown panic attacks. A constant state of high alert contributes to serious health problems and disease. It leads to type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and cardiovascular disease, obesity, fertility and libido plunge, insomnia, depression, headaches, anxiety, heartburn, pain in the body can all be caused by a high stress life. And it's not necessarily what most people think. Most people think it's all genetics. It's not. Prolonged stress wreaks havoc on almost every part of our body. So let's take a look at the brain, organs, and the systems in the body under stress. Remember, an external event isn't the stress. It's your interpretation of the event that makes it stressful. For example, 2 people in a class might respond to an upcoming test differently. Person A studied and feels prepared to take the test, so the stress level is pretty low. Person B didn't study and feels lots of stress about taking the test. So the test isn't stressful. The person's interpretation of the test causes the stress. The way they perceive their abilities to do well or not, and how they view the consequences of not doing well, creates the stress. Some research shows that the heart feels danger first and sends neurotransmitters to the brain, the part of the emotional brain that first senses stress or the fight-flight response, and that is the amygdala. It functions to avoid and detect danger and is also involved in forming emotional memories related to fear in social situations. It evaluates threats unconsciously, at lightning speed, before conscious thoughts in our prefrontal cortex right here have even time to process what just happened. For example, years ago, I got stung by a stingray in the ocean at the beach. It's on the bottom of my foot, and it was the most pain I've ever felt in my life, and I'd broken a bone before. For the next 10 years, every time I went into the ocean and some seaweed bumped against me, my amygdala overreacted as if it was a stingray and gave me the adrenaline in my stomach before I could even process the event. My amygdala would rather overreact than hesitate to save me from the stingray to keep me safe from dying. By contrast, the prefrontal lobe part of the brain processes the threat more slowly, but more accurately. And the prefrontal lobe or cortex of the brain is our latest in our evolutionary development and unique to only our species. They are the source of reflective thought. So as my prefrontal cortex analyzed that it was only seaweed, it sent a message to my amygdala deep in my brain to turn off the alarm response, that all was okay. That's the positive side of the prefrontal cortex that thinks. It can also look at the threat to see if it's rational and logical. However, the prefrontal cortex also predicts, plans, and worries over upcoming possible threats. Therefore, it continued my alarm response on a low level for the next 10 years, as I was always overcautious when I went into the ocean. The limbic part of the brain, the emotional part, consists of the amygdala, hippocampus, where memory is stored, mammillary bodies, and the brain's cingulate gyrus. They are all important in controlling emotional response to a situation. So when I went into the ocean, my amygdala sent alarm messages to the rest of my thinking brain, the cerebral cortex, and to the thalamus gland sitting above the brain stem, and sent signals to my hypothalamus, which controls body temperature, regulates emotion, hunger, and thirst, as you can see in the illustration. It controlled the pituitary gland, which is considered the master gland, and that sends chemical hormones like scouts to warn of impending danger, and thereby activates the entire central nervous system. These hormones consist of adrenaline, cortisol, ACTH, and many others, as you can see from the graph. There are two main parts of the nervous system: the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system responds on automatic, without you even thinking, controlling breath, blood flow, digestion, and so forth to keep you alive during the stress response. It controls the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. What's the difference? The sympathetic nervous system carries signals to the adrenal medulla, and it secretes adrenaline and norepinephrine into the bloodstream to be circulated to target organs. And these hormones increase heart rate to meet the threat, raises blood pressure, perspiration, dilates bronchial tubes, and inhibits digestive activities. Saliva thickens, as I mentioned before I can fight or flight. That's the sympathetic nervous system getting me ready to meet the threat. The parasympathetic nervous system kicks in after the stress is gone. When that happens, breathing, sweat, and energy expenditure for storage slow down, as I mentioned before, so the system can rest and digest. Pupils constrict, saliva becomes dilute, as you can see. Additionally, the immune system kicks in during the stress response. White blood cells and cytokines are unleashed to protect the body. They can be positive in decreasing inflammation. However, if the stress goes on for too long, like weeks, months, or even years, inflammation occurs and wreaks havoc on the body. Inflammation is good in the short run, but because if it's fighting against infection or toxins and foreign molecules, that's the good part about it. But if inflammation is chronic, even imaginary stressors can cause a release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, and research shows that many diseases, including diabetes, heart disease, depression, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, and autoimmune disorders are strongly associated with inflammation. Stress can also cause asthma, stroke, cancer, sexual dysfunction, chronic fatigue syndrome, anorexia, allergies, irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, hives, chronic pain, arthritis, canker sores, and it goes on and on. Kind of sounds like a drug commercial, right? It wasn't until the 1980s that connections between the immune nervous systems and the endocrine system were developed, which formed actually a new discipline in medicine called psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. But stress can be fun too. Playing sports, riding a roller coaster, driving faster, going on a date, or doing those things that motivate or inspire you to go beyond present levels of functioning is called eustress, EU stress. Whether you're an actor, writer, or performer of some sort, moderate doses of eustress can be good for you in creating excitement, enhanced attention, improved performance, and healthy competitive instincts. The brain creates this pleasure by releasing a neurotransmitter you've heard of called dopamine. When dopamine is moderate, it's pleasurable. But if it becomes too repetitive or becomes an addiction. Chronic anxiety or depression can result. Too much of a good thing, remember what I said about moderation. Excessive stress, like a lot of PTSD, can also cause brain shrinkage. But the shrinkage of the hippocampus that learns as well as stores and retrieves memories, it can deteriorate and reduce in size. This in turn can create severe depression, the cancer of Cushing syndrome, and higher risk of permanent impairment after a stroke. What separates good stress from bad stress, or eustress from distress? 1, the extent of the uncertainty. Too many unknown factors creates distress. Touring around a foreign city can be fun, but becoming hopelessly lost causes distress. 2, the amount of control you have. If one doesn't have control in life and everything is dictated to them by somebody else, distress can occur. Have a good balance of control over your life while leaving room for the fun and unexpected. That can be very healthy. 3, the amount of key information. Giving a speech in front of many people can cause a lot of distress, but your ability to prepare, rehearse, and communicate key information can convert that distress into eustress, the positive stress. And 4, interpersonal conflict. If you ask people what stresses them out the most, many will say specific relationships with difficult people in their lives. If you ask what helps you to feel happy in life, many people will say the relationships with specific people. So if you want to convert distress into positive eustress, change uncertainty of your stress so you have more certainty. Increase or decrease the amount of control you have. Always try and get more key information about the stressor, like a test or improving your relationships by spending less time maybe with less difficult people, and more time with more positive persons in your life. Why do some people experience stress worse than others? What techniques are effective, and are the techniques backed by strong research? In the next few modules, we're going to answer those questions. I look forward to seeing you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.